You know, you speak about oral tradition and the passing down of music, and of course, it varies from culture to culture how that's done. If we could just take a couple of minutes and pivot outwards, I remember when we worked together for the first time preparing the music for Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire live in concert. I was introduced to one of the projects at that time you were working on, which was collecting all of these great historical singing sounds and histories in your family, and you were
Yeah,
working on putting them together in one beautiful project. Um,
yeah.
this idea of handing down oral musical tradition through the generations is certainly part of that, and absolutely when you have singing in the family that gets handed down. Help us understand a little bit about that because I had no idea until you kind of shared that with me personally, which I think about still from time to time. It's a beautiful thing. And as you say, you discovered that you couldn't believe the quality of singing with some of your ancestors.
Well, the thing is, I, I would, from the moment you could utter a sound, our family would check your whether you could sing. I make a little joke about it. When people expect they're waiting for their child to say "mama" or "dada,"
Yeah.
in our family, you're waiting for the kid to go "dada." You know, it was like show business. It was like, "Can you sing?" "Oh, can you sing? Shut up!" And you were condemned. You were
Yeah. Yeah.
condemned if you were instantly Pavarotti at the age of 11 months. You were condemned. Terrible. It was like because my daughter Abigail, who's a beautiful singer, and she's involved. Um, she works with Simon Cowell, this that impresario chap.
Yeah.
Um, but she is a wonderful singer, and she's sung in many. She's sung in A Little Princess. She's sung in All Is True. She's sung many times, but she doesn't sing professionally. She's just part of and she's one of the many, 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 many amazing singers in the family. Just born with these. It's come from a DNA from all directions.
Mm.
I had a pleasant voice, but I was never the singer my father was, or indeed my mother. Um, but I trained as a singer at the Royal Scottish Academy of Music, and I literally improved my voice. A great singing teacher, and his teacher was Herbert Cesare or Cesare, um, and he's written many books, including The Voice of the Mind,
Hmm.
which is nothing to do with support and breathing and all that sort of tension stuff, but it's about visualization. And it was the first time I come across visualization, which is now in his zeitgeist. Sports visualization,
Hmm.
all that sort of training, mental training. This technique of singing is about visualizing your voice, your vocal cords doing something. You have a mental image and it'll affect how the vocal cords, which are a muscle, work. Um, and that way you're doing something. You're I suppose it's down to its basic form. Why is a great singer a great singer? You ask them what happens, and they say, "What do you experience when you're singing Pavarotti? What do you experience when you sing like that?" And you'll say, "Nothing. I feel nothing. I just do it."
Hmm.
So the ultimate aim of Cesare was to feel nothing. So he absolutely flew in the face of all the support. So I was talking about pushing the diaphragm. It's all nonsense. I believe it's nonsense because, my lungs can stretch from here to John O'Groats, and uh, with 6 weeks of deep breathing, and that habit stays with you throughout your life. But this stuff here, the minute you tense that up, problems create come from the voice. I'm the only one in the family who studied it,
Mm.
but the rest of them just wake up and they do it.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's vocal. I hear sort of vocal faults emerging as I get older because technique solidifies it. That's why great singers they have to have a technique because if they're tired one day, then they pull their technique to get them through. Other days you feel on top of the world. You feel great in the morning. I mean, the first thing that happens when you're sick is the doctor goes, "Let's see your throat." It goes straight to your throat. It's the weakest part of the body at times. Um, so that's why singers are neurotic and covering it all up. So, this is all part of my world. Um, it's huge because We had parties, endless parties, and everyone sang. You were made to sing whether you want to sing or not. Um, oh, he's a singer. She's a great singer. A great topic. Oh, you should hear her sing. You should hear him sing,
Yeah.
as opposed to anything else. It was a priority. Whether they were, I don't know, a jolly person or a sad person, it was always, oh, what a singer. And my parents would go to clubs to hear great singers and to sing and be heard. So it was gladiatorial. It was karaoke before karaoke was karaoke. But the singers were great singers. They weren't people having a go or drinking them. They went sober and they just sang sober. And it was a performance. It was a way of life, a local way of life, and it's still going on. Um, so I was surrounded by this.
Hmm.
But it wasn't until, it's a big long answer to this. It wasn't until I got older I realized, oh my goodness, I just totally take it for granted. And then when I got older, I thought, just a minute here, I have to start trying to preserve some of this,
Sure.
so because people won't believe this. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just making sure I get recordings if I get what I can and clean them up and of aunts and uncles and everything else. Um, just to prove to the world, because I keep saying, "Oh my God, my aunt's a great singer." People say, "Oh, sure, sure, sure." Honestly, then I would let my friends hear them. They would say, "Oh my goodness, is that your father? Is that your? Why isn't he a star? Why isn't she a star?"
Yeah.
Well, they weren't interested, and that's the thing about greats. You know, a friend of mine's father was a very famous Scottish singer, and a guy called Robert Wilson. And Robert Wilson said to my friend, for every one person standing on stage doing it professionally, there's 10 better than the street.
Mm.
And I believe that. I've
Yeah.
heard unbelievable
Yeah.
voices, people who are not interested. One night, my father took me to a club. My father said, wait till you hear this woman. So she got up and she sang a Puccini aria. And I went up to her afterwards and I says, oh my God, why?
Yeah.
This is an international voice. She goes, I'm not interested. I've got 3 kids. I'm not interested. I've been offered 1,000 times to go to Scottish Opera. Just not interested. You think, well, you can't force a person.
Yeah.
They've got to have the voice and the passion to let the world hear it.
Hmm.
And these great singers, who we all know, usually what accompanies it is this drive and ambition that takes us through 40 years of a career. I hope that's not too long and convoluted, that completely to this day surrounds my life. It's a huge part of my life.
Yeah.
It is the absolute center of our family's existence. Who can sing and who can't sing?
Yeah. Well,
Um,
that's that handed down talent. As it sounds like you have in your family that's been going on for generations. I agree with you on the 10-to-1 ratio. The street singers, the street performers. It's incredible how much raw talent there is in the world. Much of which has not been discovered in the way that we know, kind of in through seeing just normal channels of distribution, right? I'm not sure if you've ever been to New Orleans. If you have, you may have heard her play. If you haven't, you got to go find her. I haven't seen her in a few years. It's been a few years since I was there, but every time I've been there, since the age of, I think, 21, when we took a road trip from LA all the way to New Orleans with my friends in college, one of the greatest clarinet players I've literally ever heard in my life. And she plays on the same street corner, generally speaking. Whenever she performs, she's got a washtub bass musician with her, someone playing rhythm, and unbelievable. And I remember the third time I ever heard her perform, I finally had the courage to talk to her, and I kind of asked her in a similar way that you asked the singer. I said, why aren't you out playing with Harry Connick or with Wynton or with any of these guys? And she says, honey, I've got a house in Florida. I got a house here. I got 3 houses. I get paid more here. And she was so sweet.
uh-huh.
But I only laughed because for her, I could tell it was not just about the money. I mean, she played circles around some of the greatest jazz clarinetists I've heard, and of course
Oh,
via a very different way. And not to take away
yeah,
from other people's talent, but to
yeah.
see her do this.
Mhm.
Well,
I mean, but that I can just see her. And you're
yeah,
right. That a wonderful term you used there. It's a very smart term about the usual channels of distribution.
yeah,
And that's the thing. People sort of seek those channels
yeah,
and they get it distributed, and people get into it. That's great. But fly. Those channels are flying by people like that all over the world.
yeah,
I likewise. I can just see her totally content. No, that's what you want. You're projecting what you think you would want to happen to my life. But
Yeah.
in fact, I've got it sussed.
Yeah.
I'm completely happy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm doing here? She says she's got all her home comforts. She plays. There's no one telling her what to do. She has all the choices.
Yeah.
You know, I've been very fortunate. I've worked on so many wonderful pictures and with great collaborators, and but they haven't all been smooth running. Um, so I've been sometimes I've gone for hire and it's not pleasant. Not very often, thank goodness.
Yeah.
But she's no gun for hire.
Yeah. That's
She's
right.
got the gun and she's hiring it. So she's her own. She's
That's
her
right.
own voice and her own universe, and
Yeah.
that's it's like my family who sing locally, and um, you know, the cost of living where they are is a lot lower than London. They've got a much bigger house, and
Yeah.
people are living in huts down here and paying $500,000. They've
Yeah.
got a house with 4 bedrooms for about a quarter of the price. Um, you know, the air's better, and they sing locally and have a great time to themselves. Wonderful life, and a fantastically huge community. It's a principality, and
Yeah.
they're completely content and loving it, and look at me like Lassie, you know. Why are you diving all over the world? What have you got to prove, you
Yeah.
know? And there's you can't help but what you are, you know.
Yeah.
So and you know, the older I get, the more and more I go back to that, and it's really enviable. I mean, I don't envy. I have a fantastic time, but that's not to be in any way to belittle what they do. Their lives are as rich as mine in many
Yeah.
many ways, and they've got that continual sort of support as a community, which is a real thing, and it's a very very close community I come from, incredibly close community. It's unbelievable. We have a party. We have to keep the numbers down to 150.
That's
So,
all? Only
but
150?
and I'm not
Yeah.
exaggerating.
Jeez.
But but you know, a big hire hall, etc. That happens frequently. So I absolutely. There are so many gifted people out there. They're
Yeah.
just and they're very happy. Um, like for example, my great friend's an opera singer, Janice Kelly, and she sings in film Great Expectation, which you mentioned. And Janice, um, she says the same thing. She knows so many fabulous sopranos and tenors and everything else, um, who have sung maybe for 10 years, been amazing. And thought, you know something, I'm getting married or I'm going here and I'm off somewhere else. But what that because I've had fun. I've had 10 years out or whatever, I'm off.
Mhm.
You talk. I had a great opportunity to have lunch uh, with Jonas Kaufman.
Mm.
Um, he's through a friend of mine. He's an astonishing tenor,
Yeah.
one of the greatest tenors I think has ever lived, and it was a real treat for me. It's the only thing I'm slightly starstruck is with great singers.
Hmm.
Very, very, very smart, intelligent, and down to earth, and regular person. Very nice. Um, and he was saying, you know, he's saying sopranos have a really tough time because um, great tenors are few and far between. So if you've got a good tenor, well, you're in great demand, your work. But there are so many great sopranos that there isn't enough work for them, and the life as a soprano is so tough um, because there's so many of them that a lot of them fall by the wayside over the years who maybe want to carry on. And he says he's lost count of the great sopranos that the world has never heard, and those
Yeah.
are the ones that are singing in great opera houses in the world.
Right.
So there are stories everywhere about that.
It's true, and I think as an artist, anyone really who's creative, I think it serves us well to if we have an experience such as seeing and hearing a street musician singing, perform, instrumentalist, whatever it is, being able to kind of think back and look at that through our own lens, our own context, and
Sure.
be reminded, right, that there are
Yeah.
so many ways to be creative, and I think that I've noticed even just in the very young transition I've had from age, let's just say age 20 to now, as of last month, age 40. Oh, don't get me started on that psychology. Just in the last 20 years, for me, having gone through the desire to want to do one thing here or one thing there or another thing over here, and realizing now all these years later that, you know what, you may end up here, you may end up there, you may not, and whatever other opportunities you have in front of you, you got to jump on them. You really got to jump on them. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of, and I noticed this with some of my colleagues when I was young, opportunities were lost because it wasn't an opportunity that they necessarily wanted to pursue, but they could have. And then you know, you just never know. Going the other way might get back to where you want to be without
Yes.
getting to where you want to be directly. And I think it's an
Uh,
important lesson to learn because um, there's so many ways of being creative, and when we start to limit ourselves and how we choose to be creative, you may not ever get to where you want. I mean,
yeah.
you know,
I
um,
I I think I totally agree. I think I've found, and I don't always adhere to this philosophy, but generally speaking, um, if you seek and pursue something that gives you, as much pleasure as possible
mhm,
artistically and without being put upon in the process, that's going to make your day fun,
mhm,
um, and to be able to say yes to the right thing or no to the right thing or the wrong thing, and to say, well, no, I don't want to work this project because I know the what they're expecting. I can't give them what they want, or
yeah,
I'm not comfortable working with those people. You have to be very, 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 very circumspect and very, very confident in yourself, or follow your instinct. I'm sure you do the same thing. I've learned that your instinct, we don't tap into it enough as human beings.
sure,
This sixth sense is
mm,
absolutely on the bullseye every time you tap into it. If you learn to see that, okay, I'm lost. Right? When you start panicking, and I panic a lot when I'm traveling around. Okay, where is it, right or left? I've no idea where I am. It's before satellite nav. It's the right. And sure enough, you find the right street, or you find the right
right,
restaurant, or there's something about your holy instinct, your body's instinct, and that happens to your choices in life. I remember I was offered a, a highly prestigious director and a film, and which just looked, and I thought, and I just finished a film, and I was exhausted before computers were now. Everything's by hand. It's just too much.
yeah,
Um, and I thought I must go. I've got to have a holiday. So the family went on holiday to. We are very, very fortunate to have a place to go to in France. After 10 days, I thought, oh my goodness, I'm feeling a lot better now. Oh, I turned down that picture. Ah, well, that's life. And the phone rang, and it was Robert Altman
uh,
to do Gosford Park. 10 days later, and I thought, now there you go. And this other film was not a success, and it was very troubled. And my instinct, I mean, there was no obvious um, sort of alarm bells in that respect.
right,
I just knew I wouldn't be comfortable.
right,
Um, and this film with Altman turned out to be an extraordinary experience. And he even wrote a song with my daughter, who was 19, and she sang two songs in it, Abigail. And we became great friends, especially with his wife, Catherine. And after Robert died, one of the last suppers she had over here was at our house.
mm,
So by saying no to something, which was very difficult, because every sinew in my body was saying, no, don't do this.
yeah,
Um, and I've learned in life, if you can, and you're in a position to say no. If you aren't, then obviously many, many years ago, I would say to you yesterday because I just had to keep working and pay the rent. But when something is screaming, I can afford to, even when I had very, very little starting out my career, I would say no to things. And my wife was so supportive. Things that actually plunges into sort of real sort of periods of struggle. And I just felt, no, I'm going to be deeply unhappy. I'd rather be
yeah,
unhappy this way or not unhappy like that. So I
yeah,
think, I think if people try and keep that balance and follow their gut, obviously one has to be practical, realistic. But when there's an alternative and you can hang on, and something's not comfortable and it's going to make you unhappy, then say no.
sure.
Yeah.
2005, another Mike Newell collaboration, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. One of my favorite moments. I mean, there are so many favorite moments, and I just got to tell you, now that we're able to kind of look back and reflect on what I was just so humbled to be a part of, that amazing experience, we had in Royal Albert Hall together.
Thank you. Wonderful
It
job we did. Wonderful job.
Well, it was a real pleasure to share this music with your home crowd, so to speak,
Yeah, it was
in
fabulous. Thank
London.
you. It was a lovely box. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, it was a really great experience, and I've had the luxury of being able to conduct this entire score a number of times and in a number of places. And one of my favorite scenes, over and over and over, not only to conduct but to emotionally react to, and what it means to the film, and what it means to just the art of composition in film, is this bizarrely uncomfortable scene where Harry is asking Cho to the ball, and
Mhm.
it's filled with so much teen angst. And,
Yes.
it's just it's bursting with angst in the
Yeah.
performance, the content, and the way that you choose to approach it is with a flute, an alto flute, and some
Yeah.
beautiful strings, and
Uh-huh.
it gets you out of this awkwardness and into this
Yeah.
beauty. And so let's just
Uh-huh.
see what's and listen what's happening here.
Okay.
Joe,
Yes?
I just wondered if you... I just wondered if maybe you want to go to the ball with me?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
I was just wondering if maybe you wanted to go to the ball with me.
Oh, Harry, I'm sorry, but someone's already asked me. And, well, I've said I'll go with him.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Fine. No problem. Okay, good.
Harry! I really am sorry.
All of us
We've all been
have
there.
experienced, yeah, something similar in our life, right? And that's one of my favorite
Horrible.
things, is that we all have our own
Horrible.
story of this, right?
Horrible.
What went through you here? I mean, what was your first reaction? And not the least of which is, how is this kind of, what was it being a part of the wizarding world, J.K. Rowling's wizarding world, as we now call it?
Well, it's extraordinary. I had, even though scored many, many, many films, including some big sort of tentpole movies, big movies as they call them, tentpole movies.
Yeah.
Nothing prepared me, or still prepares me for the enormity of this franchise, um, and the phenomenon which it is. It's just unprecedented, um, and quite frankly, I wasn't. I'm into it with Mike, knowing I'd worked with Mike before, and I knew
Mhm.
that it was a big film, and there's the responsibility that goes along with it. But nothing like, I mean, we brought the Albert Hall and to see what there in the orchestra and to think, oh my goodness, it was always my dream to have this, to have music live to picture. I always visualize this, as I said earlier. Here we are. You be careful what you visualize and wish
Mhm.
for. Um, in that case, that was one of the most extraordinary experiences for our family. To sit there and watch that. Uh, the Albert Hall, filled to the rafters. Um, and this phenomenon, which is this franchise, and to be part of it, it's a great, great privilege. And I put my heart and soul into it, as I always do anyway. And thank God, because the level of scrutiny has been extraordinary over the years. And here we are again, scrutinizing it.
Yeah.
But I always believe as a composer, you have to, because I did a picture. I won't mention the picture, but another great director came in and he says, "I saw blah 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 last night," and I said, put my head down, and the movie was not good. And he goes, and this person said, very tough. He goes, "Listen, Patrick, you got to do big American movies or American movies." But I loved your score. I hated the music; it's a pile of blah blah blah. But I loved your music. So, and this person, I was about to embark on this big movie with this guy, and I said, "Well, I didn't know you would see that." I said, "I see everything," and that's the thing. Other directors, other artists, other great artists like yourself, people see everything you do, and even if it's like the products, the writing's not as good or the performances don't live up to it. Because this director says, "How do you write the film to the score to a bad movie?" I said, "I just imagine the movie it should be." And I imagine the performances should be, but with a great movie, a great film like Harry Potter, and a great director, such an assured, experienced director, and a great story and
Yeah.
great characters,
Yeah.
it's all there for the taking. And I really wanted to make it's quite an operatic score, and I wanted to. It's a much darker story, and the kids are no longer kids; they're young adults. I hate the term kids. I always like to say young adults. The young people in that picture are going through this horrible transition from, puberty as you grow older.
Yeah.
It was a nightmare for all of us. It's really awkward. Your hands grow like some alien. Feet are growing before the rest of your body, and you're
Yeah,
bumping into things. And
that's right.
it's horrible.
Yeah.
Why do they have to travel in packs? And how are you supposed to get one on their own to ask them?
Blimey, Harry, you saved dragons. If you can't get a date, you can.
I think I'll take the dragon right now.
All of that I completely understood and empathized and sympathized with. But to be part of this franchise is a tremendous honor. And as I say, it's still going on. It's ongoing. And but this particular scene, this is where I come up with the Harry and Winter theme. Was this scene here? And I thought I come up with a little melody. I wanted a little love melody between those two.
Yeah.
And it sort of swells up at the end. And the choice of instrument, I suppose, in a lower register and sort of breathy.
Yeah.
And you think in terms of that kind of the breathy instrument. So I thought of them as kind of, as puberty is woodwind. That's it. Those are physical sort of things come into your head. That kind of breathlessness. You can't get your breath, and
well, there's a somber tone to it, right? I mean, the somber qualities of the instrument. One of the things I love so much about the scene musically is how you pivoted and went the other way.
Yes.
You turned this into a bit of, again, what is Harry really feeling here?
Yes,
he's probably a bit sad.
Capturing the essence of those two characters, and especially Harry, of course. It's really it's about his awkwardness. She's she's a kind of just a witness, really. Crazy witness.
What, come again?
It's about his agony.
Yeah.
But then when she says no, you just play his love for her anyway. It doesn't matter. He's already given his heart away, so let it out over the mountain. So it's almost a kind of cry of love over her head as we see that mountainside behind. I suppose it's the old, romantic in me as well.
Yeah.
I love a romantic story. I cry quite easily I can watch a film and really sort of immerse myself and enjoy it just like a regular person that goes to see a movie with no preconceptions of how all the technical stuff works. I wanted to play his passion and his love for her. I didn't have a lot of time to do it because there's so much in that story to pack in. It was a little flourish of his romantic side, and David Heyman, the producer who found the books, he particularly loved this theme.
Yeah.
And so much so that I do this very often if I can. If I've got the time, I will write a concert piece based on it. So that's how that piece came about, because David Heyman loved it so much. I said, okay, I'll write this. It's not part of my contract, but I will write this as a concert piece, because you have the luxury of this great orchestra and a very generous budget. So it's quite expedient to do that, and then you've got it on the album. So they were very supportive and let me do that.
Brought to you by CineConcerts.